Hello and welcome to the podcast of the Easter Sunday message. On Easter Day, Aileen Cantore brought to life the whole Easter story by the opening of eggs. Each egg's told a part of the story, the meaning and importance of each aspect, from entry into Jerusalem to the resurrection. Happy Easter to you all. God bless. See you next time.
Picture a shiny, neon pink plastic egg. You crack it open expecting, a jelly bean or maybe a cheap sticker, but instead you pull out a rusted iron nail.
Like an actual Roman crucifixion nail.
Exactly, yeah.
Huh.
That jarring collision between a childhood game and brutal, ancient capital punishment is exactly what we are exploring today. We're doing a deep dive on a live church sermon that uses an object lesson of 13 numbered plastic Easter eggs.
Right. And before we get too deep, we should probably say we are looking at this strictly as an anatomy of a narrative. We aren't here to endorse the religious theology or the historical claims.
Right, of course.
Our mission is just to dissect the mechanics of how the speaker uses these simple physical objects to transmit really heavy, complex concepts to you, the listener.
Okay, let's unpack this.
Yeah.
Because the speaker, they ditched the candy completely.
Yeah, no candy here.
None at all. Instead, they fill these eggs with things like a strip of leather embedded with flint, a scrap of purple cloth, and full those iron nails. It's almost like a true crime pop-up book.
I love that analogy. And notice how the speaker leverages these stark economic realities to really ground the story.
What do you mean by economic realities?
Well, for example, they point out that we rarely find crucifixion nails in the archaeological record because iron was incredibly expensive back then.
Oh, wow. I didn't realize that.
Yeah, so the Romans, they would just pull them out of the wood and reuse them on the next victim.
That is so grim.
It is. But what's fascinating here is how that economic detail acts like a cognitive anchor.
Right. It brings it down to earth.
Exactly. If you are trying to communicate a massive, abstract theological concept, you can't just leave it floating around in the clouds. Holding a piece of leather or hearing about the sheer cost of Roman iron, it forces your brain out of this, spiritual fairy tale mode.
Yeah, it plunges you straight into the gritty mechanics of a first-century penal system.
Yeah.
And it makes it feel real.
It really does. And they interweave these tactile objects with the political tension, too. Like the Roman governor, Pilate, being absolutely terrified of a massive Passover crowd starting a riot.
Right. So you have the physical torture devices married with this volatile political landscape.
Yeah, and it completely bypasses your natural filter for old, familiar stories. It makes the stakes feel dangerously immediate.
It really does. But the physical brutality, it's just the setup here. The narrative shifts gears from the physical to the theological once we get to the 11th egg.
Ah, yes, the 11th egg.
Inside this one is just a piece of torn fabric. It represents the massive curtain inside the Jewish temple. And the speaker focuses on this one highly specific detail, the curtain ripped from top to bottom.
Right.
But I have to push back here for a second. Hanging an entire theological framework on the trajectory of a fabric tear. It seems incredibly fragile to me.
How so?
Well, if I'm listening to this, my skeptical brain immediately asks, couldn't a structural collapse cause that? Or it's just a heavy curtain fraying at its weakest point? Like, why does this specific physical mechanic carry the weight of a whole worldview?
It is a big leap, yeah. But if we connect this to the bigger picture, the trajectory of the tear is the speaker's linchpin for agency.
Agency, okay.
Right, because the temple curtain functioned as the ultimate quarantine zone. A barrier separating flawed humanity from the lethal perfection of the divine.
So keeping people out.
Exactly. So if the curtain tears from the bottom up, well, a human being did it.
Ah, I see.
But if a massive, heavy curtain tears from the unreachable top down, the speaker argues that is a definitive binary visual of divine action.
So it's basically a visual shorthand for God dismantling the quarantine from the inside out.
Yes, exactly. The speaker's argument is that Jesus absorbed the ultimate consequence of sin, and the absolute second that happened, the barrier dropped.
That makes sense from a narrative standpoint. The tear is like the physical receipt for a spiritual transaction.
That is a great way to put it. The brilliance of this lesson is that it recognizes how much human cognition struggles with invisible paradigm shifts.
Right. We need to see it.
We do. We need a physical avatar, a torn cloth, a heavy stone, a rusted nail. It helps us process a complete software update to our reality.
Which really just proves You don't need a massive budget to communicate world-altering ideas. You just need the right symbol at the right time. So what does this all mean?
I think it means that if you want someone to internalize a profound truth, you shouldn't just tell them about it. You literally have to put a piece of the evidence right in their hands.
Absolutely. And think about the very end of this narrative.
Yeah.
You have Mary Magdalene standing outside an empty tomb. She is actively grieving a horrific execution.
Right.
And she actually mistakes Jesus for the gardener. And then, in a fraction of a second, an impossible reality shatters her entire worldview. The fundamental rules of life and death are completely rewritten right in front of her.
It is a massive shift.
It really is. So think about that. If you encountered a single impossible event that completely destroyed your understanding of reality, how fast would you run to tell someone?